We all thought that Marvel Avengers Endgame was the craziest crossover of all time, but it looks like there's plenty more that's even wilder. Conor McGregor, the UFC legend, has just challenged a soccer player and a comedian to a fight, and the internet is losing it. In today's video, we're talking about how things got started, plus all the latest updates from McGregor's life. First up, let's talk about this challenge. Conor McGregor is undoubtedly one of the greatest fighters to ever come out of the UFC, so fans are wondering why he's challenging random people to a fight. The random people in question happen to be Irish soccer player Paul McGrath and comedian PJ Gallagher, which might just be some of the weirdest mixes of people we've seen in a while. The ex-champion has had some Twitter beef going for a while, and if you've been near his social media at all, you'll know what we're talking about. Gallagher made a little joke aimed at McGregor, and that would have been the end of it if McGrath hadn't also jumped in to defend the comedian. McGregor went off on the two on Twitter, and since then he's deleted the tweets, but nobody's forgotten. But the peak of all the drama was when McGregor challenged not one, but both of them to a charity fight. That's right, it's going to be 2-on-1, which is definitely going to rake in a ton of money for charity. The charity causes he picked include mental health and anti-bullying organizations, and that's the only tweet he left up after he said some pretty brutal stuff about McGrath. When he first tweeted it, everyone kind of already knew nothing would come of it. McGrath has some serious knee issues, the same ones that forced him to quit soccer way back in the 90s, and Gallagher is only a comedian and doesn't have anything much to do with sports. But how did it all start? In today's world, all bad things start on Twitter, and that's exactly how this started. The beginning of the feud was an innocent mistake, but things got spun around until shots were fired back and forth. It was definitely some cancel-worthy stuff, so it's no wonder it got deleted. Things started off when a TV presenter, Laura Sanko, was talking about her top 5 active UK fighters, and on the list of Brits, number 2 just happened to be the Dublin-based McGregor. If you know anything about the Irish, they hate being called British, and it's pretty much an insult in the country. It would have been brushed aside, since it was an honest mistake on Sanko's part, but what really got things going was when PJ Gallagher replied to the tweet saying, "They can have this lad." It was already a big enough insult, and Gallagher had just made it a lot worse. McGregor saw the tweet and immediately fired back, and he used quite a few choice words when crafting his tweet. He poked fun at Gallagher's wife leaving him, and even compared his posture to a prawn. Things were getting messy, and someone had to step in before it got out of hand. The two started going at it with each other, and nobody said anything until Paul McGrath sent a supportive public message to the comedian, and even called the fighter a bully. McGregor didn't take that one sitting down either, and insulted McGrath by calling him an Englishman before dropping the challenge. Plus, McGregor took an even bigger step after this. As if the Twitter beef with Gallagher wasn't enough, McGregor also had to take things a step forward with McGrath. The two are both legendary Irish sportsmen, with one being a two-weight world champion in the two hardest categories, namely lightweight and featherweight, and the other being a beloved Manchester United defender back in the day. But McGregor was definitely upset, and he tweeted out saying that the soccer player was banned from a pub back in Dublin, before adding that he wouldn't be allowed at any of the pubs he owns. Surprisingly, that's actually a whole lot of places, since the former champion has just bought a ton of establishments after he redid the Black Forge Inn. A fan then hit back at McGregor, saying it was unacceptable to go after the widely loved soccer star, to which McGregor replied by saying that he had been attacked first, yet he was still being called a bully. He added the part about the pub banning, and everyone took this to mean that he was making fun of McGrath's very public struggle with alcohol. The man really didn't hold back, since he also took hits at Gallagher's mental health struggles in the previous tweets. It seems ironic that he'd want to raise money for mental health charities after that. The Englishman comment was also a super low blow, because if you know anything about soccer, you'll know that McGrath's mom had to run away to London to give birth to him since she was unmarried, and he was taken away from her and made to grow up in a foster home in Ireland. Next up, here's how things ended happily. Obviously, the actual fight wasn't going to happen, but things had already gotten super ugly between the three. Nobody was holding back, and some serious insults had been flung back and forth. The only thing left to do was put it all behind them, which thankfully they did. McGregor finally released a video of him walking onto his private jet, and even though the video seemed to be satire, it was clear that he was putting the feud to rest in it. He said that he was going to call it a day on the feud with the other two, and even admitted that the others had won that round. He said that he was going to be the bigger man, which might not be hard when you're a UFC champion, and bow out of the whole thing. After all your fans have rallied behind your opponents on Twitter and called you embarrassing, there's not really much else left to do. McGregor did also clear up that Gallagher had been a hypocrite since he claims to be a mental health advocate, but he got a ton of people firing insults at someone on Twitter. His final word on it was that it was disgraceful, and that he didn't even know him and had never talked about him in his life. The last word on the whole situation ultimately went to the soccer legend, as he hoped that everyone involved had gotten some time to think and that they'd also realized how out of hand everything had gotten. He wishes his opponent well and stepped out of the feud. Next, McGregor could have this reunion to look forward to. In other big news from the world of boxing, it looks like McGregor is going to be united with one of the biggest MMA stars in Bellator. Dylan Dennis is scheduled to make his boxing debut taking on KSI in New York, and his plans for finishing his camp have landed him right back at the same gym he used to train at with Conor. McGregor isn't fighting anytime soon, what with that leg injury he's dealing with, but he's been visiting Straight Blast Gym on and off. Dennis has been out of action for a while as well, 3.5 years to be specific, since he's been dealing with a severe knee injury since 2019. The jiu-jitsu black belt hasn't been in the Bellator cage in quite a bit, but he's stayed relevant in the sport with his social media presence, and the world is waiting to see him get back to fighting in January 2023 when he'll take on KSI. Another Bellator star, Peter Queally, has been known to be on good terms with Dennis, and they've even trained together in the past. He's confident that his friend will be able to make a splash with his return. He said that boxing is the best comeback after a knee injury like that, since MMA is much harder on your body. Queally, the current Bellator number 9, has also said that he's going to train with him before the big fight and be there to support him. Moving on, here's who people are comparing Dennis to. Dennis's return to boxing has everyone talking, and people have some pretty strong opinions about who he's facing off against. Currently, the general opinion seems to be that Dennis will be an easier opponent for KSI than Tyron Woodley was for influencer-turned-boxer Jake Paul. Paul has faced off against a ton of big names, and he's managed to knock out the likes of Ben Askren and Woodley. But Askren was known for being bad on his feet, and fans currently believe that Dennis is just a tiny bit better than him. They still think he's got a long way to go before he can become Woodley or Silva, though. Finally, Jake Paul has something to say as well. It might have surprised everyone, but Jake Paul is actually pretty great at what he does, and he's knocked out some pretty big names. We don't know yet when he's going to be fighting next, but it looks like he's planning for a date around February 2023. The bigger question, though, is who his next opponent is going to be. It's more likely that he'll be up against Tommy Fury, but there's been tension between him and McGregor for a while, which means it might just be the two of them against each other. This all happened because of a recent social media fight between the two, which is something McGregor's been doing a whole lot lately. Someone asked him if he'd be willing to fight in the influencer space, and that's when Jake stepped in. He decided to poke fun at the lack of title fights McGregor has been part of lately because of his injury. This might have been okay, if a little mean, but what he next said really fired his opponent up. He promised to knock him out in either cage fighting or boxing. He clearly doesn't want to back down, and it does seem likely that the two could be up against each other at some point. McGregor hasn't made any confirmation yet, but knowing him, he won't back down from the challenge either. That's a wrap for this video. What do you think of the whole beef? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.